Well, hello again, guys, from here inside Villa Park. Now, I'm here to reflect on a goalless draw, a stalemate. And ordinarily, that might not sound too exciting, but I thought what played out there today, I thought it was absolutely fascinating in so many ways, and I want to get into that. And even then, talking to Eddie Howe downstairs, again, lots to pick over. And one man, well, he is dominating conversation, and he wasn't here. Now, Newcastle didn't want that to be the case. Eddie Howe said that yesterday, and they did come here and play well, and they did come here and do enough to win the game. We'll go through all of that. A lot of positives to take, absolutely, on the back of such a turbulent, disorderly summer. Quite remarkable, really, for Eddie Howe to get his team in that shape and to play the way they did. Newcastle United, that key word from the summer, which he delivered. When you think back to Celtic 4 weeks ago, wow, that performance so far removed from what we saw today. Newcastle did do more than enough to win the game, but they didn't. And that is why, for me, to talk about Alexander Isak here is entirely merited. Absence doesn't make the heart grow fonder, it makes it grow angrier, really. You guys, as Newcastle supporters, Eddie Howe and his teammates should be angry that Alexander Isak wasn't here to win the game for them, because as much as Eddie Howe said downstairs, you know, it's hypothetical that we don't know if we would have won with Alexander Isak. Yes, he is going to say that. I know he is. But I'll deviate away from hypotheses and what may or may not have happened. I'm prepared to commit to Newcastle United absolutely would have won with Alexander Isak in the team. I don't think there's any doubt about that for me. And that is, in a strange way, that's a positive, because they played well. They created chances. They had territory. It was a performance in which they were the better team with the better players. We'll get the Merit Stars. The Merit Stars are back, of course, and a few lively contenders. But they didn't win the game because they couldn't put the ball in the back of the net. And there was inevitability about that, really, almost from the start. Not just from the start of the game, the way it played out when Anthony Elanga goes through and misses that early chance. But even yesterday and last night, coming into the game, all the conversations you have that Newcastle would play well, not score, not win. Now, they're lucky that failing to score didn't result in failing to get anything from the game. They got something they deserved in a result and a point to build on. So it's not the end of the world. But Isak's presence, or rather him not being here, but still being at the club, means he is still here. It's almost now like an omnipresent source of doubt and distraction for his teammates, because they know the narrative and the die is going to be cast that without him they can't score. Anthony Gordon played well at centre forward. I thought Eddie Howe was at pains to stress that afterwards, and that's fair, that's okay. But when it come to putting the ball in the back of the net, a phrase I'm probably going to use a lot during this video, he wasn't able to do it. Anthony Elanga wasn't able to do it. Harvey Barnes wasn't able to do it. None of them were. And you just think, if this Isak situation was resolved, if he just wasn't at the club, would that then free that burden, that doubt, that weight? Because as much as we're talking about Isak being the distraction here, with or without Isak, Anthony Gordon and Harvey Barnes are good enough players to have better composure and better execution in front of goal than what they did. I really believe that. Is it not just now that this Isak situation, and Eddie said this afterwards when I asked him, it just needs resolved one way or another as soon as possible? Because as long as it's there, and as long as it lingers, he's the phantom striker who is just haunting the football club, really. He is. And I think there will be anger, and there was anger amongst the away supporters afterwards, because they're paying a guy £140,000 a week, even though he's set to be hit with a club record fine. They're paying him that money, and they've got the player at the club on the books who they identified and they coached and they brought on, who, if he'd been here today, they would have started the season with 3 points, with a win that would have been deserved. Because he's not, and because he's not by his own choice. We say he's one of the best strikers in the world. Well, yes, he's certainly the most well-known striker in the world, and that is striker in the essence of refusing to come to work, refusing to cross his own self-imposed picket line. So yeah, I know why that chant emerged. So does Eddie Howe. He was asked about it afterwards. The one greedy bee at the end. It was loud. Now, I say fair play to you guys for supporting the team during the game. The support during the game was fantastic. And post-match, you aired your feelings, your frustration, your anger. As I said, absence makes the heart grow angrier, not fonder in this instance. There weren't chants for, Alex, please come back, all is forgiven, come and score the goals. No, you let your feelings be known. And then he said afterwards, Support during the game was unbelievable. But feel free to say what you want post-match, and you did. And that has sent a message back to Alexander Isak. Now, is the situation retrievable on the back of that and everything that's gone on? Well, Eddie would still like to think so. The door remains wide open for Alexander Isak to return, but crucially, post-game, he's just said that's only down to one person. That now isn't down to Eddie Howe. He's done what he can do. His teammates would have said what they can say. The club would have put the offer of a contract in front of him. They've done their part. It's only down to Alexander Isak now. And he doesn't want to be here. Didn't want to be here today with his teammates, with the fans who have backed him, with the coaches and staff who have made him that player. He wanted to be somewhere else, and beyond that, by extension, he wants to be somewhere else entirely. He wants to be at Liverpool. On that quick insert, I dare say there'll be Liverpool fans watching, and again, an update on that. All options are still at play. With each passing day, the likelihood of it reduces, but what I do know is Newcastle are still absolutely looking for strikers to bring in. Yoane Wissa, I remain convinced he's going to come in next week. We're expecting that one to progress. In the looking story I broke last night, Goncalo Ramos, PSG striker's back on the agenda. He was, and then he wasn't. I was told last week it's not happening. Then I was told yesterday, actually, there's a chance it might. Newcastle have been given some encouragement there. But again, I think that would be a really hard one to do. I wouldn't hold my breath on that one for want of a better phrase. But they are looking. He is an option. Absolutely. I've had that confirmed. That's why I put the story out there last night. I think he would be good. I think he'd be very good. I've interviewed Ramos once or twice. Real maturity beyond his years as well. Speaks a few languages. Seems a bright, switched-on individual, intelligent. That's the type Eddie Howe likes. And on top of all that, he's clearly a very good footballer. But that is for another day. And for today, let's look back on a game which I said, walking away there, one of my colleagues said that won't live long in the memory. And okay, I get where you come from a neutral perspective. But I thought it was fascinating. I thought there was so much to pick over. Now, Newcastle started well and they set up camp in Aston Villa's half. The only problem was they spent the opening 45 minutes looking for the mallet to smash Villa over the head and put the ball in the back of the net. There I go again. Never nearly fell off the step. Now, regained my composure a little bit more than Newcastle did in front of goal. Anthony Elanga, 3 minutes in to his Newcastle debut. He's mixed up in Villa's midfield. Villa were poor, by the way. If I was a Villa supporter or a reporter, my reflections would be entirely different. I didn't think they were very good at all. Looked a little bit undercooked. Connections weren't there. Across the team, didn't really have a good balance to them at all. I thought, players Newcastle have looked at. I thought McGinn was good, really had an anger and a bit between his teeth to the point where he was tackling his own players at one point in the first half. I thought Ollie Watkins looked a little bit off it. And others who are like Morgan Rogers, too, was down on this near side in front of us, wasn't really at it. But anyway, Anthony Elanga goes through on goal. And he never looked convincing, did he? There was just something about it. And we had a great vantage. This is my seat here, right behind him. And he seemed to, for a guy who moves as quick as he does, and wow, does he move at speed. He seemed to sort of amble into the penalty area. We're not too much conviction. The defenders who were close him actually made ground, but it wasn't that put him off. It was more the finish. The ball seemed to slow as he went into the area, and his shot was just at a lovely height for the goalkeeper to save. And I looked down immediately at Howe and Jason Tindall, and you could see that anguish and that unfolding sense of the narrative they perhaps feared would play out. That being set from the opening scene, from the opening words of this match. Elanga misses. A few months later, Livramento and Harvey Barnes combine on the left. Thought it was a good combination during the game on the whole. Barnes plays a lovely cross to Anthony Gordon, edge of the 6-yard area. I was going to say unmarked with a free header. It became a free shoulder, really, so clumsy was the connection. The ball bounces over the bar. And straight away, I'm feeding into the Daily Mail live blog that, there's a theme emerging here. And it was a theme that continued. Now, Gordon then had a shot from a really well-worked set play. Now, they've got the new set-piece coach in Newcastle, and set players during pre-season, we can only presume on reflection now, it was rope-a-dope. Because the set players were awful during pre-season. They were good here today. Another well-worked one. Eventually, it comes out, not as it was intended. Ball comes to Anthony Gordon on the edge of the area, shot, tipped around the post. But from that point on, they didn't really threaten in terms of efforts on target, and it wasn't until Aston Villa went down to 10 men in the second half that they had another one on goal, and that was Anthony Gordon, a spectacular effort from range. And I was sat there writing. I always say to you guys, don't know that you're writing to deadline, and I'll put the link in the description of my piece below the line. And yeah, as the game went on, I almost knew Newcastle weren't going to score. WhatsApp group with my friends there, they're talking during the game, and about 15, 20 to go, I just said that they're not going to score here. You get a smell, you get a feel for these things. They almost became increasingly desperate Harvey Barnes had a chance from the position in which he normally puts it in the top corner. He put it in the top tier. When that's getting to him and he's in that, position A for Harvey Barnes, for that trademark execution and finish, you just sort of know it's not going to go that way. One comes to Anthony Gordon. It's a really clumsy touch in the area. When his touch is usually second nature. Gordon did okay through the middle. I thought he was a nuisance. He set the tone. The incident that led to the red card comes about because of two things. Anthony Elanga's brilliant through ball and Gordon's pace to get beyond Konza. It's a blatant red card. I was bemused as to why Konza hung around for confirmation of that. But from that, they couldn't make that tell. And I don't know what you guys thought. Tell me below the line in the comments. I was never really convinced they would. They didn't bring a striker on the pitch until William Asula in the 90th minute. Now, I wouldn't necessarily have brought Asula on sooner, but I perhaps would have put Gordon on the left a little bit sooner, because I didn't think it was ever going to really work for him through the middle in terms of scoring a goal. I think he's actually a better goal threat out wide from the left. Should they have put Gordon and Barnes on the wing? Because Anthony Elanga, now, let's get to his performance, because promise, absolutely never gave up. His involvement in the goal, that little run in the through ball was fantastic for the goal. It wasn't a goal, was it? It was a red card. If only it was a goal. It was fantastic, but that apart, I thought quality-wise he was lacking at times. Gets away from his man, and it was an extension really of what we saw in pre-season. Now, I said in the pre-match video that I had concerns for Elanga because I was worried without a centre forward, without someone to put the cherry on the cake for him, a lot of his good work might go undone. Well, I thought today, to bring it back to him rather than the absence of a striker or Isak, I thought, no, a little bit more was on him today. He got away a couple of times and just didn't have that execution, be it putting the ball there for Anthony Gordon, Alexander Isak, Yoane, Wissa, whoever it may be. It's got to be a better final product there. A couple of times he was sloppy with touches as well. One ran out of place. So for Elanga, I'll always be honest, guys, debutant or not, we're not here to protect them. We're here to say it as it is. And I hope and would expect there's better to come from him, even though the endeavour and the promise was absolutely there. I hope that's fair. That would be my reflections on Elanga, because I know it was a talking point. And as a front three, they threatened, they worked hard, they absolutely set the tone in terms of that press and closing Villa down and giving them no time at all. I thought winning second balls in the middle on the back of that, Newcastle were excellent. As a team, they functioned, they really did function. And after a difficult summer, they came into this with hunger, with a sense of balance, I thought, throughout the team. Kieran Trippier was good at right back, Livramento good at left back. We'll get the merit stars, and perhaps stepping on the merit stars' toes. But yeah, good performance and certainly something to build on. But to have that final building block, they need a striker. And be that Alexander Isak returning or bringing in those players, it's got to be one of the other. Anthony Gordon's only scored one goal for Newcastle as a makeshift centre forward. Makeshift's perhaps unfair, because I think he does well in terms of his all-round play. And that was a penalty against Manchester City. As long as that goes on, it is, I've used that word, that haunting feel. It needs a resolution. It probably isn't going to have a resolution this week in terms of Isak in or out. Yoane Wissa will come in. If he does, I would put him straight in against Liverpool. I just think it would change that whole mindset and that whole feel around it. Okay, yeah, the merit stars. It was a good performance, but in ascending order. 1 star, Kieran Trippier. Not guaranteed to start the season in the team, but he's had a good pre-season. Lewis Hall, of course, coming back from injury. But I thought Trippier, he just set the tone with that class and that composure that he's got. And when you hear at the game, you really see players who talk and organise. And Trippier did that. 2 stars. This player was running away with 3 stars at half time. Wasn't a chance in the world he wouldn't occupy top spot on the podium. The podium. 1 star for me, if that. Sandro Tonali, he was brilliant in the first half. He ran the midfield. He ran the game. There was one incident where Morgan Rogers got away in the left channel. Tonali recovered, won the ball off him, started an attack from that point. He never wasted a pass. Talk about players setting the tone. Tonali set the tone for Newcastle's performance, but he doesn't get the 3 stars because of this man, Dan Burn. Wow. Now, Aston Villa didn't really threaten, and at half-time they had 0 shots on target. Now, you may look at that and say, well, Villa were toothless. They're only toothless because of the defence and because of the defenders, and Dan Burn in particular. He was fantastic, and he got better as the game went on. He didn't miss a tackle. He didn't miss a header. He won, one challenge where he's put the ball in his man into touch over on the far side. Things like that do set the tone. Being chased now. There we are. Aston Villa's equivalent of Dan Burn. Yeah, he's kicking me into touch. I'll finish these reflections outside. See you in a second, guys. Now, yeah, where was I? Dan Burn. I thought he was magnificent today. I thought he looked like an England defender. He looked like the best defender on the pitch. Don't forget, Newcastle have got Sven Botman and Malik Chow on the bench there, who in theory, potentially, if you are looking at it from afar, they might look like Newcastle's first choice pairing going forward this season. I don't think so. Dan Burn is going nowhere, and so he shouldn't. Not just for how he plays, and I don't want to do down how he plays. He played magnificently. You know, he's top of my podium based on what he did performance-wise, but there's so much more to Dan Burn as well. He's the first player out afterwards there, fronting up to the press. He's just a good character, a good guy, and he's a captain, and he's a leader in everything that he does. And right now, Newcastle need those sorts of personalities. That's why I put Kieran Trippier in there too. So, to come to reflect, now, I've gone there 4 or 5 minutes without mentioning Alexander Isak. I can't not when it comes to reflecting on a day that should have been 3 points, not 1 point. It is 2 points lost, and it's lost because they didn't have the striker who is still a Newcastle United player. They didn't have him there to put the ball in the back of the net. Let's finish with that one more time. But on the whole, an encouraging day, a performance that told me Newcastle are still united, that they are still set to have that good, brilliant, successful season that I believe they will and that they should have. It needs a little bit of work, primarily off the field than it does on. Although on there, everything was okay. It seemed to be clicking. It needs that work to be done to resolve the Isak situation. And once that happens, I'll have less to talk about, certainly. But you know what? It is for the betterment of Newcastle, and certainly on the evidence of that there today. And Eddie Howe's words afterwards, admitting that he wants it resolved as soon as possible. I think that's what the club now, of those above at the top, was the greatest indication that this Isak distraction, it's got to be brought to an end. Now, before I do go, guys, a happy birthday to a long-time viewer, Mary, whose son, Stephen, asked me a long time ago, could I mention on the first day of the season, this is her birthday, to say happy birthday, and there you go, I've remembered. Happy birthday, Mary. I dare say it would have been better with 3 points, and it would have been an absolutely deserved 3 points, but nonetheless, a lot of positives to take from that. Tell me what you think below the line. Tell me what you thought about the stars, the performances, the good, the bad, the ugly. Tell me what you think about the Isak situation, you know, on those performances of those here there today. What I would like to see more from, it just reminded me there, Bruno Guimaraes. I thought Guimaraes was very good during pre-season, looked lean, looked ready for it compared to some previous summers when he has come back a little bit out of shape. He looked in shape during pre-season and he didn't look out of shape there, but I still thought he was at times a yard off it. More to come from Bruno. Speaking there of captains, I think he can go to another level still. But yeah, guys, tell me what you think. I've spoken for long enough. Hit like, comment and subscribe. Link to my reflections below the line. Daily Mail Plus, only $1.99. You get all my written content on there too. Okay, guys, I will see you next week with what my next visit should be, talking to you after I've spoken to Eddie Howe before the Liverpool game. But there might just be a signing to bring you before then. Okay, see you soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.